Okay, please mute yourself if you are not muted. Everybody except the person who's speaking, please. Because I hear some music in the background. Hi, this is the February 13th Verse Virtual reading, and I welcome you. If you haven't been here before, we start with our features, and then we have a very small pre-arranged open mic. So there probably won't be any walk-ins, possibly one on the open mic. We normally only put people on the open mic who are members of Verse Virtual. So our first reader today is Mary Torregrossa. Mary is often noted as a storyteller, but is most importantly a story listener, a practice that her job as ESL teacher in Southern California has prepared her well to do. She's originally from Providence, Rhode Island. It blends portraits of people, places, and experience from both coasts into her poetry. Her chapbook, My Zocalo Heart, is published by Finishing Line Press. And then she's had poems in a number of places that I'm not going to detail, even though they're listed in her bio. She's a winner of the Arroyo Arts Collective Poetry in the Windows and named Newer Poet of Los Angeles. 14th?
Yes.
Yeah, 4th by the Los Angeles Poetry Festival. Other well, there's more publications, but I can't list them all here. So welcome, Mary, and I'm glad you came. I was worried that you were not going to make it.
No, I was busy putting on my lipstick before I got on. I'm kidding. Hi, everyone. It's beautiful. I love this. This is the Poets Saturday morning here in Southern California, where I am with all this. There's clouds and sun and clouds and sun. And so sometimes I look forward to those cloudy days, you know. Go figure. Well, let me tell you a little bit about myself through this first poem. This is called About the Accent. To the reader, feel free to drop your R's when reading this poem. Yeah, I know, I talk like this, and people like to guess what eastern state I'm from. It's one of the original 13 colonies is what I say, but they rarely get it right, you know? I talk with my hands and put quarters into pocket meters outside City Hall in Pasadena. But when I get off the plane and where I'm from, everybody talks the same as me. We drink iced coffee on hot, muggy summer days and toss rock salt onto our front steps in winter. I get drunk on the green of so many trees. In my hometown, if you want to find your way around, you have to know where things used to be. Why, just the other day, my neighbor says, there's a new Dunkin' Donuts on the corner of Prospect Street and Hope, you know, where the old Newport Creamery used to be. All the aunts and cousins talk like this. They think my kids have the accent, but they don't, because they were born and raised here in California, you know, where Mexico used to be. I'd like to read the next piece, which is an ekphrastic poem. It comes from an image, the very first Rattle magazine image, I don't know if it was the first or second, was of a child walking through the woods. So I researched the German and a translation of the German story of Little Red Riding Hood. And this comes from that research. The Huntsman's Daughter. And the epigraph is, "Whither go you so early in your red velvet cap and apron?" She lifts the latch and leaves the path collecting sunbeams. Deep and deeper still beyond the threshold, she wanders into shadow to where the twin flowers grow pink on spindly stems, where ring the lilies of the valley like bells through the spruce. She plucks tangy red lingonberry from the forest underbrush for grandmother's jam, drops them in the pockets of her apron, soon stained red. Graybeard watches, never blinks. No musk, no tart blood scent, he prowls and finds the lamb who smells like milk and rye. He leaves paw prints in the dark peat. Long have I sought you, comes a whisper from the woods. This poem was translated into the Korean, and so I was very pleased about that, to have this poem given more views, having more people read it through the translation. And so that was a great experience, and I can see why they chose this. This is called Night Heron. In flight, they tuck their heads back against their shoulders. I can name this bird that forages the mud flats on tiptoe. Evening opportunist. It clenches crabs and earthworms and little fish in its hard black beak. My feet sink into soft seabed at low tide, clamming, bucket half filled with quahogs. The black-crowned night heron lifts into the wind shift, from land to sea at dusk, free to roam, gray bird against gray sky, it squawks with steady wing beats, leaves me mired in the muddy estuary. And this is a poem based on a family photograph. It's called Apiary. Pink and ruffled velvet petal roses sing. Look at me, look at me. But we look at the camera instead. The roses stretch out slender, thorny canes and trifle. Pick me. Their fragrances, like sweet lemons, drift past our heads of frizzy hair. The children in the photo smile. Their breath mingles with the scent of damask floribunda. But we look inward and say, take the picture before we lose what we hold close. We fascinate the bees. They squeeze bee bodies through cracks in our skulls, a hive of them in our heads. What is not said, the queen in one of us is dead. Sometimes a poem has just like a single word or a single image that just you hold close to you, and then suddenly, years later, I've always wanted to write about this, and so you do. The basis of this poem is from the movie Moonstruck, where Nicolas Cage is baking bread in the basement of the bakery in New York, and he says, "Bring me the big knife." And it's very dramatic, and we laugh at that, my family and I. But that Italian thing of baking bread. My uncle's a baker. My cousins are cooks and chefs, and so it's in the family here. This poem, though, is called "Finally, I Am Tasked with Using the Big Knife." In the kitchen with the women in their Sunday aprons, I am handed onions. The golden brown skin is wrapped tighter than sunburn. Fingernails pry at papery layers until I find an edge to rip. It tick, tick, ticks like the clock in a Hitchcock film. "Here," says one aunt, "use the big knife." She runs the blade against the sharpening stone. Sh, click, sh, click. The aunt sets the orb firmly to the board and runs the steel right through so it bleeds raw, pungent milk. The glistening center is exposed. Inside, I discover a tender white tongue, a pulpy crescent that makes me think it must be sweet. But once I put it in my mouth, I realize it's something else. The room is filled with crying after that. This poem is called "The Crash on Lone Pine Canyon Road," dedicated to the unidentified survivor. A tire explodes and I lose control. The car flies like crows shaken from their roost, but gravity is a tensile thread, and just for a second, the car is suspended, then overturns. Metal grinds, snaps, a fine ash from last summer's forest fire billows like a mushroom in the headlights of another car taking the curve. The night is moonless inside the wreck on Lone Pine Canyon Road. I think it's rain, but it's footsteps sprinting over gravel on the shoulder of the 2-lane mountain pass. The window was closed, but now it's shattered. Cold air huffs in as I am yanked out, dragged, the smell of oil in the air. Pine needles twine into my hair, my clothing covered in soot. Oh my God, someone prays over me. The vibration of the engine still running and wheels spinning. And that's a true story. We came across the wreck just as it happened, and my husband was able to turn off the car and get the woman out of the vehicle. And I just watching this thing in the haze of a night and lights and trees and stars, and it was just like made for a poem. My last poem for the set is takes place in Canada. I had an opportunity to go on a 100-mile canoe trip for 7 days, and 3 days prep before that and 3 days after that. And it was a remarkable experience. And in those days, we didn't take cameras with us. We didn't have cameras that we weren't photographers. So if you didn't, all you would have would be an Instamatic, and we didn't have that either. So I tried to journal my way through the experience. And this is a poem called "Long Portage, Quebec, Canada." White water churns, crashes into terraces of granite rock weathered by 10,000 years of glacial melt and flow. I portage the northern forest footpath alone. The mulch of many winters' fallen leaves muffle my footsteps. A runnel of bright green moss flashes within the myriad of mud-colored trees. I pass through groves of white birch and yellow aspen, jack pine and blue spruce. Mushroom caps glow against the black trail. Silver gray lichen spread like fish scales over logs and upthrusts of dark basalt boulders. Greenstone and pink quartz fleck the topsoil. No critters, no insects, just black velvet loons gliding the placid cold lakes along with our canoes. Eagles overhead, the bugle of a moose in the distance, owls and wolves at night and the growl of rapids downstream. Here it is I walk alone, glimpsing the rough current when the path turns toward the river. The big water rushes, but I linger, neither up or down this tributary do I see the red canoes with which I should rendezvous at a place where the portage drops to the edge of a deep lagoon. So says the map that Jim keeps in his backpack out there on the river. I am empty-handed like Eve. My apple on this lonely portage is solitude and fear tinged with divine sweetness. I hear the low drumming call of a bird somewhere in the thick canopy of trees. Listen for the sound of men's voices. Hear only the crack of branches shifting in the ancient wilderness. Thank you, Robbie and Michael, for inviting me to read today. And I hope you enjoyed a variety of my work.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Mary, one of your first poems put me in mind of a photo that I took. I would like to share this with you all briefly.
Thank you, everyone.
Is it working?
It seems to be finally working. If it's not, I'm trying to get back to the meeting to stop sharing my screen. It says it's not responding, so let's just go.
Wait a minute. It says now that you've started screen sharing. Try showing the image. There we go.
Oh, yes, right?
That's a wonderful picture, Jen.
So.
Yeah, those birds are like calligraphy, aren't they? No wonder they're so popular in Asian paintings, but they're like runes on the backdrop of the oceans. That's beautiful.
I loved your poems. Thank you so much for those wonderful narratives. We don't get enough of those. Our next reader is Mary McCarthy. Mary is a retired RN who's had a lifelong love of words and visual art. Her work has appeared in many journals and anthologies, most recently in the anthology I edited, The Plague Papers, and The Ekphrastic World, edited by Lorette Lucic, editor of Ekphrastic Review, and the latest issue of Earth's Daughters. So I welcome you, Mary.
Thank you, Robbie.
Mary squared.
Yay, Mary. Mary McCarthy, I grew up with a lot of Irish women. And when I saw Mary McCarthy and Mary Torregrossa together, I was like, this is like old times.
Oh, well, those old-fashioned names. Okay, I seem to have a lot of poems that deal with my grandmother. And I've just reached a milestone birthday where I've outlived her by 1 year. She was a very important figure in my life. Most of these poems that I'm going to read were in verse virtual, some were not. Here's the first one. Grandfather, grandmother. He brought her wedding diamonds across the Atlantic in his left boot heel. They were all flawed, beautiful enough when he met.
Just stay with me.
Oh,
All right, what'd you do?
I don't know what happened.
Say hello, Shelly.
Hi.
Hi.
I just joined.
They just mute.
Robbie, should I start over?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, Mary, start over.
Okay. This is the first poem in my grandmother poems. Grandfather, grandmother. He brought her wedding diamonds across the Atlantic in his left boot heel. They were all flawed, but beautiful enough when he married the baker's daughter and they stood together solemn and proud, unsmiling for that most important photograph. Solid bodies and rough hands, uneasy in silk and lace, the delicate flowers and fine cloth ready to evaporate like fog, leaving them behind, essential and plain as stone, standing together among the last to wear such quiet self-possession, looking older than they could have been in the gentle brown tints of that lost time before the Great War, when such faces were still possible. This is another grandmother poem. Then there was Grandma, who was the only one with her own room, where she kept odd treasures, pins and fancy handkerchiefs, hats in boxes, perfume in a glass bottle, shaped like a tiny crown, a fur stole with the feet and head of some small glass-eyed animal still attached, who sat with us to watch the rain, who taught us Chinese checkers and canasta, who read to me when I was sick and cried at all the sad parts, who had her hair done Saturdays and brought home cookies in boxes shaped like houses, who did her books on Sundays, sitting at her big desk with her green ledgers and bills on a spindle, who took us to the movies and did jigsaw puzzles, who sang us hymns and German lullabies, whose word was law, who said the same prayers every day and played late night pinochle for money, who tended bar alone, a widow longer than a wife, who could erase unwanted strangers with a regal stare, who hung on to see my graduation and died 1 week later, who did not complain, who kept her own counsel and was a strong woman in the old ways women were strong, a bulwark, a fortress, a refuge, a safe place. One more today from Grandmother. When nightmares drove me out of sleep, she always let me in to snug up against her warm body, her solid back a wall against all terrors. She was my safety, her arms the only soft place in a country full of scales and claws. I thought I could always find my way past the open mouths of the doors along the dark hall to her room, where I would always be welcome, protected from whatever monster had my scent. But she was no good past morning. Daylight burned off all her special power. I learned too late it only worked on ghosts and shadows and would not keep me from the cold wolves that hunt us while we wake. My grandmother's name, Eva Catherine Alexandrunas, and her married name was Tchaikovsky, which was my maiden name, my dad's name. Okay, this next poem is one of my favorites. It tries to address some of my experience as someone who suffered from bipolar disorder. It also references the old fairy tale of Tamlin, the man who was captured by the fairy queen and whose lover could only rescue him on one night a year if she could hold on to him while the queen changed his looks from one monster to another, to another, to another. And the poem is actually dedicated to my sister. Enthralled. I found myself lost, black, mechanical, an alien left behind. I had razor blades instead of bones beneath my skin. I spoke in colors, words like sequins breaking light into smaller and smaller fractions. I had to sort you out between the voices of the trees, the grass, shouting and singing, sharp and dangerous as fields of broken glass. I came naked, feathered and spurred, my tongue baroque, unregulated, my arms full of awkward gifts, apologies like small black holes, swallowing worlds, blind spots white as lepers, then fevers and other sudden lightnings, hard to find room for in any reasonable space. But you held fast through fire season, keeping track while I burned and raved, a speed demon racing through 1,000 changing shapes. You held strong, laying claim against enchantment. You never blinked. You never saw any face but mine, rock steady, waiting for me underneath the shadow made of strange mutations where I found myself lost. Thank you. This one here is kind of an elegy, things that we're going through, we're facing right now. Listen, the whales are dying, washing up on beaches, floating dead in waters grown too warm. They drown, tangled in nets, wounded and scarred by boat strikes, their bellies full of plastic trash. The song of their long grief, threading through the deeps, their stories end a terrible loneliness. Reaching back to when they first returned to ocean, now so few left to hear the songs, so few to sing, and no one left to do more than count the dying and the dead. Remember, extinction's nothing new. All come to it, soon or late, great and small. Even the stars die. Death so spectacular they punch a hole in the fabric of the universe, taking all they can with them as they go, leaving behind a hungry rupture, swallowing all that comes close enough to grab. And yet in our small compass, we grieve our losses, even the ones we made with greed and pride and carelessness, too late to recover more than a shadow of the lost. I do have one here that directly refers to the pandemic. And some of us have experienced this pandemic firsthand, myself, unfortunately, among them, but fortunately, I also recovered well. And this poem's called Against Contagion. I am washing the dishes, slow and careful as stitching up a wound. One more ceremony of order, like all those other small acts we are always doing and never done. The washing and folding that holds these spaces up, walls and windows, each task one more sandbag set against the rising flood, wiping the doors and knobs with bleach, alcohol, Lysol, the way grandmother would take trace a fine line across them with fine salt to keep the invisible enemy out. None of it now more than a formula repeated in the dark, something to lean on, a shelter brave and flimsy as a tent in a hurricane, the kind of hope we beg for, even though we know nothing will save us. Do I still have a bit of time, Robbie?
You know what? I haven't been keeping tabs.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll try to finish up.
I'm sorry, Jim.
That's okay. That's okay. This one's called In Hard Times. When thoughts snarl rife with treachery and the heart is a well of sorrow, remember you are always worthy of mercy, that the world stuns with unstinting beauty in wild places and gardens both, like sweet water for every thirst, that we can find our way back to grace in the work of making with words and song, seed and stone, earth and imagination, giving solace and shelter to all who come into the open circle of our arms. The blessings of generosity, our best foundation against the all-devouring. And I have one last that's kind of dramatic.
I think we better leave it.
Stop?
there.
Okay.
Yeah, but not that I don't want you to go on, and I'm sure people agree with me.
Oh, I'm an inveterate ham.
It's a good thing for a poet. We
Yes.
all are. But thank you so much for sharing this work with me.
Thank you all. Thanks for having me.
It should be out there wider audience. So thank you very much, Mary. Our last feature today is Michael Minassian. Michael was born in New York City and grew up in New York and New Jersey. In addition to, boy, he's been around. In addition to living in Florida, California, Connecticut, North Carolina, and Texas, he lived and taught overseas in England, Jamaica, Saudi Arabia, and South Korea. So bring us the news, Michael. Oh, for over 30 years, he was a member of the English department at Broward College in South Florida and studied and served as a guest tutor for 10 years at Cambridge University's summer study program in the UK. I'm not going to read the publications because they're too long, but Michael's poetry manuscript, A Matter of Timing, won the 2020 Poetry Society of Texas's Book Award. Publication to come in 2021. So take it away.
Okay, thank you so much, Robbie. Thanks a lot. I'm going to start out by reading some poems from my book, Time is Not a River. And I'm going to start with a poem called I Know You Are Not a Scientist. Familiar refrain if you ever listen to the Republicans. Dear friend, the letter begins. I'm sorry to tell you that the earth is indeed round, no matter how many two-dimensional drawings you produce. And yes, it's true, I had a lonely childhood and suffered mightily, having not even an imaginary friend, though I found at an early age that I could communicate not only with animals and birds, but also fish and mammals of the sea. There I am, in the photograph on page 1 of today's newspaper, holding up a globe, riding on the back of a blue whale as it leaps from the ocean to sing. The song made, as you know, without vocal cords. Hence, this letter. If you cannot sing, simply hum the tune as it wanders through your mind, like the sun revolving around the earth and the planets spinning like plates in the circus of air. Thank you. And this is a poem. When I was a kid, I loved comic books. I would save all my pennies up and go buy comic books, as many as I could get my hands on. Even classic comics I enjoyed. But my favorite was always Superman. So this poem is about Superman. Superman lived next door. When I was just a kid, Superman lived next door. Of course, he had lost his superpowers by then, and only wore his costume on the 4th of July. Most times he sat around the house drinking beer, working on his scrapbook. Sometimes at night, you could catch the green glow of kryptonite he kept in an empty aquarium in his living room. When I got drafted, he let me hide out in his fortress of solitude, but I damn near froze to death. Later, he helped me get a job on the local newspaper. After work, we'd listen to the Kinks song and laugh at the weakling with knobby knees. The one we all become in the end, Kal-El said, folding up his glasses, Clark Kent glasses and business suit. Who do you want to be today? He asked me before he finally disappeared down in Florida, right before the last moonshot, the one that never returned. Thanks. Next two poems are from a section of the book called The Postcard Blues. This one's called The Postcard on Reverse. I am writing to you from somewhere in history, illogical though that may seem. Time, you see, is not just a river. It's a group of islands and the wooden skeleton of a wrecked steamboat. While this place itself took a builder's pen and 100 years to complete, plus 12 dead workers, happy in their sacrifice, eating out of lunch pails and sarcophagi. The cathedral pictured on reverse is a drawing made too late even for photography. Notice the stained glass windows when lit by the sun, like a row of teeth sharpened. Thanks. And here's another postcard poem from my time down in Florida. It's called Postcard from Key West. I've been thinking about you the whole damn ride down from Miami on US 1, in the long tunnel of fog and rain, through the upper and lower keys, and over the 7,000-mile bridge, past the 7,000 white cranes that seem to shadow my car and skirt between the palm trees, mangroves, and the flat green water that merges the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean. As if it really were two separate bodies of water that should know their own boundaries. I finally got down to this hotel where the only room left had a busted AC, and last night I heard about a dozen roosters 3 hours before dawn. And now I'm sitting in this Cuban place, drinking café con leche and thinking about calling you. But instead, I ask for the check, then head for the beach, where I hope the mosquitoes won't find me, and I can watch the waves roll in and roll out. And I suddenly realize love is like the overseas highway. Sometimes the road doesn't go on anymore. You reach the end of the continent, and the only thing in front of you is the blank sea. And behind, the same plunging pavement, pointing back in the opposite direction, while a drunken hurricane lurks by the side of the road. This poem is called Eyes on Fire, and is the opening poem in this collection. And it was first published by an online journal called Diverse Voices Quarterly. And then I was, about a year later, I was contacted by an editor in Holland. And he wanted to reprint the poem in an anthology called Licht, which is light in English. and was published by Amnesty International, and is an anthology of poems about Holocaust, genocide, and ethnic cleansing. This one is called Eyes on Fire. With what burning eyes do I see the past? The black ash that eats the edges of the photographs, the white ash that covers my eyelids. With what burning throat do I recite the names no one alive remembers? Names I have reduced to titles, events, and relationships. Great-grandmother, brother who drowned in Lake Van, grandfather's first wife and son. With what burning ears do I hear the wind traveling from the past, the sound reaching my brain with a series of sharp cracks and scratches, like old 78 RPM recordings, the labels written in English and Armenian, one language bleeding into the other as the record begins to spin. And I hear the music, duduk, ud, and my own voice. Thank you. I see, I think, is Alan, yes, Alan Wolowitz is here. This poem is, I think it was in VEV, but it's, hey, Alan, this poem was inspired by an Alan Wolowitz poem, which in turn was inspired, I think, by a painting by one of your friends about people riding on the subway. This one is called Forgotten Stops. Riding the subway late night, too young and dumb to be scared, sleeping drunks and forgotten stops along the way like missing teeth on a comb. I lean my head on the girl's shoulder. She smells of wine and paradise. Her hair tickles my words. I'm writing a poem in my head she'll never see. By the time we reach the last stop, I'll have forgotten her name. Thank you. I'd like to close with this poem. This is from my manuscript, A Matter of Timing. Almost forgot the name of it, which won the Poetry Society of Texas Award this year. This is called Icarus on the Train. You get on the subway and the first thing that hits you is the stench. Burnt wax and bird shit. And the guy taking up the whole half the car with those dirty wings. Feathers and blood and snot. Plus he's crying and moaning about not being able to fly in between the high rises and the wind blowing through those city canyons. You almost feel sorry for the guy when they tell you it's his father who made him come to the city. Although I don't know whether to believe that or not. And he wants to know, should he stay on this train? But you tell him no, get off at Broadway, then take the B train to Columbus Circle, then the A train to the GWB. But you'll have to walk to the bridge. Good luck getting through that neighborhood and that stinky get up. But he says he wants to get to the Jersey side and hang glide off the Palisades. It's a nice sunny day above ground, and I wish I could trade him a harp for a harpsichord. He's gonna need it when he crash lands in the Hudson. The heat is already melting the wax. It drips and leaves little slick dots on the floor with bits and pieces of feather and dander. All that's left to show that he was ever really here. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Michael, for that set. Was that all?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
I timed myself about 20 times this week.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Hey, Michael, can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes, I can hear you.
Could you, where would I see that poem, the Icarus in the
It's
subway?
in the, it hasn't been published yet. It's in my new book, which will come out
Okay.
hopefully late spring, early summer.
Okay, could you send me a copy? My email, just to look at? I won't steal it.
Too late, can't steal it.
All right.
I'm going to go ahead and start the open mic. I noticed that a couple of people, well, yeah, a couple of people on it are not here. So I'll be able to fill in a spot or two at the end.
Just a quick
Charles?
comment, Robbie.
Yes.
With the open mic, the limit
Yeah.
is 2 poems or 5 minutes. So to those who are reading, be aware, if you go over, I'll be making noise.
Okay. Thank you very much for remembering to tell us the rules. Charles Perrone, it's your turn.
Okay, so I'll stick to just one. It's 28 lines. I'll go slow. I signed up this time. I said this time my timing was timely because Jim put the announcement out for the sign up, and about 20 seconds later I was there, which is exactly the opposite. Usually I don't see it until 20 minutes after everyone else has already signed up. So happy winter to everybody. This is dedicated to everybody in poetry workshops and prompts and cues and all that stuff. I am, which I dedicate to Jeffrey Hall in Austin, Texas. I am number one. It's one of 7. It's a set of 7. This is just number 1. Yeah, I am that guy who thinks that a peer, having been assigned to write from the prompt, I am, means me too. I am that annoying hanger-on who hears the cue and immediately and urgently wants to know if I am is supposed to be followed by adjectives or nouns or both, and in which case, if these are regulated by any rules. Yes, I am the collector of apt and appropriate modifiers, actively alliterated at all angles to ameliorate all auditory areas. And I am the aggregator of nominative, non or real entities, baby, boy, teen, adult, man, middle-aged, messmaker, elder, and more, citizen, resident, traveler, passport holder, border wall jumper. I am not the subject of Yo soy Joaquin, I'm Joaquin, though I know him, nor of Sam I Am by one Dr. Seuss, an actual MD, if memory serves. Yet, I am sick and tired of having to remember so many things, not to be subjected to criticism, harassment, ridicule, and the like, not to mention 2-part descriptors making singles feel inadequate. I am this, I am that, I am thin, I am fat, I am prose, I am not, I am wrought. I am rhymed, I am primed to explode metaphorically or even literally if I can manage to set and ignite this here fuse that I am confused about or about which I am confused, used, abused, and disabused of my I am alternative takes. One to no one. I am, you are, we is, we are too. Enthralled by this notion of first person self to be able to admit that I am writing with a progressive slant can mean more than one thing I'm prepared to admit is that I am me, myself, and I may be tautological, but still logical. And an ongoing affirmation of this old being while beginning anew. Grazie.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our next reader on the open mic is John Jonkins.
And here I is. How's everybody doing today? I'm going to read two poems. These are both in virtual. The first one is a part of a series I'm writing based on questions posed by Pablo Neruda. What does autumn go on paying for with so much yellow money? The sky burst vivid yellow, trees fluttering, golden leaves onto sidewalks, riches scraped in whispers, the city sanding off a percentage, cashing a season before afternoon sun melted assets. Dividends dripped, flickered from the molten tree line, threaded with black, brush-stroked branches I followed down towards some rushing paramedics. One person quiet on a stretcher, a second in an orange down jacket propped against trash can, unconscious. Leaves kept falling, as if trees flung gold to buy these two a room, or, sensing anguish press above their roots, wept what tears they could. Two policemen watched me, looked as if thinking in their turn on a smart-ass question, why don't you make like a tree and leave? I let the breeze take me, cast myself adrift. And the other poem, the title is from a line from John Ashbery. Imagine some tinkling curiosity from the years back. A dirty white couch was dumped in the middle of a parking lot, arranged catty-cornered, as though placed inside a living room. Days later, a plastic baby gate leaned against the couch's back. I'm waiting next for a mahogany hexagon end table to appear. My dad's black coffee in a tan mug with large black snowflakes, a mug from a set my mom had snagged on a mobile gas fill-up. I'm pausing for the lunar reflection on a black Spanish-style, station wagon-sized Packard Bell TV cabinet. Its blow-out-the-wall sound when Dad cranked Man with the Golden Arm just to see what would happen. On quieter days, the wood's furniture polish nosed me as I homeworked on affluent shag. I'm eavesdropping for a Maple Philco's soft, unvarying coercion, the TV phono cabinet where, steady as sun and moon, my brother played 5 LPs of Christmas songs until I broke the Bakelite arm. He hieroglyphed those surfaces, 3 years of committed wear. Fresh white lines moonlight immaculate asphalt. Nothing stirs. I'm waiting. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Penelope Moffett is our next reader at the open mic. We so seldom hear from her, so let's take it away.
Okay, I'm going to read the poem that's in the current verse virtual, and if there's time, I'll read another one. It's 11:55. Okay. Died and went to. Imagine my surprise when I found myself in heaven. Not some faux representation, some nirvana come lately, but the real deal, angels and all. And yes, the devil was there, implied though not showing his face. There wasn't much in the way of faces, but holy moly, there were clothes. The demon tracking me was quite a dresser, although he wasn't exactly a demon, more a guy in search of a little love, which he wasn't getting from me. I understood there were choices, just like when skin and bones defined us, that I could embrace darkness or light, or even both, that I was strong enough to let him wrap his suede jacket arms with their feather-like tassels around me. And it wouldn't mean I'd picked hell. In fact, there wasn't really hell, unless we chose to make one, obstinately turning away from joy, just like we did on Earth. What surprised me most was that I was still me, that the traits engraved in life held on in death, that the ones I loved were there, even if I couldn't see them clearly. In fact, I could invite them in for tea, my mother and 3 sisters, who by then were also dead. I could make cups of hot peppermint for us, in a room with soft chairs and small tables, no walls but the cosmos, the soft light of stars. I could call up the man I'd married once, wherever in the afterlife he was, still resolutely choosing pain. Even for him, there was a cozy chair, a cup of herb, the chance to decide differently. A sort of golden being let me know these things obliquely, showing more than telling, like any decent maker ought to do. Not God exactly, but his agent. An embrace was offered there too, but I turned it down. Once a reporter, always a reporter. You never lose that feeling you should stay detached. And I was still new, still looking around. When he heard I turned away from light's caress, the stunned look on the non-face of the dark one told me I'd rejected something special, a pleasure so intense no sane soul would say no, that the radiant feathers of the angel, the pulsing body of the angel, are the closest thing to heaven you can get in paradise. There is a flight of golden stairs, and the way up lies through yes. Thanks.
Thank you, Penelope. I don't think there's time,
Okay. All right.
but that was wonderful. I think I've heard that one before, and you've worked on it some since I last heard it. Our next reader will be Mary Ansley. And I hope I said your name right today.
It sounded right.
Oh, good.
It's easy once you remember not to pronounce the Z. Okay. I thought I really enjoyed the poems, especially Mary from Providence. I thought I'd read a Worcester poem. That's where I was born, and that's my father's city, and he just turned 90. So the nurses welcome my father home. For him, though, that is Worcester, city of single-serving table talk pies bought at my cousin's grocery store, city of coffee ice cream, of scrambled eggs with kielbasa served at the all-night diner, downtown served with a can of Moxie, city of old factories where friends' parents worked, turned into cannabis dispensaries, shops that sell hemp clothing, city of pharmacies turned into vape shops and sushi bars, city of old schools that look like factories, coal-soaked stone hulking on the hillside, city of dirt roads, rough trails retreating into groves of ailanthus, boxy houses, and boulders twice their size. City of the paper he still reads, amid the politics, looking for funny stories about marijuana-infused ice cream available in tomato sorbet or squash, or the wedding at Northborough Cemetery where only the minister wore a mask. City of the accent he is losing as the nurses welcome him home. Okay, I think I'm just going to stop with one, because I don't want to bury this poem.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann. You brought it home, girlfriend. That's it.
I was curious about those flavors. Okay, our next reader is Judy Cronifeld.
Hi. I'd like to read two poems, one quite short and the other a little bit longer. A lot of my life has been spent teaching, mostly at UC Riverside, but at other places as well. This poem is called Non-Teaching Day, and it reflects some of my feelings from that long life of teaching. Non-Teaching Day. I drive by a long line of students as they labor up the hill to campus in the rare California rain, holding umbrellas stiffly in front of their chests, the way they'd hold candles in a procession. They advance singly, not talking, the steady tick of the rain seeming to quiet them and turn their thoughts inward. And each of them, alcoved in his private space, achieving the hill's crest where I stop at the light, appears to me briefly dignified as a figure in high relief, with book or pen or pastoral staff on a cathedral porch. All day, while I busy myself with my own rounds, I will think of them, flowing inward and outward to the sound of bells, their hearts so carefully contained, like brimming bowls of guarded water carried from a desert well. You often feel as a teacher that you have the psyches of your students when they're not disturbing you in your hands. And it's a very responsible position to have. This next poem will turn into an elegy, but you'll have to follow the turns. It's called, need that title, Going Downhill. He was really going downhill these last few years, outsiders often pronounce, with hindsight when friends or relatives flatline. But inside, by the cozy hearth of our own souls, when we're wrapped in fleece, book in one hand, whiskey in the other, to sit out a bad cold, though we're born with dual citizenship in the country of the sick and of the ill, home is always feeling well, and down means coming up again, not death's greased skids, until we're breathless, bottomed out of hope and hospice. How some of us guard against even a whisper of helplessness, like my always sturdy spouse, who went down with a clatter this morning in the shower, thrown off balance while squatting to squeegee the bottom of the glass door, and punched a hole in the fiberglass wall and bloodied his knee, but got up painfully again, saying no, no, no to my outstretched hand. My brother-in-law went downhill quite fast this year after his cancer was diagnosed, as he tried to balance hope for more with gratitude for his life, resignation folded up in a back pocket. A klutz with crap for knees I couldn't balance at all when long ago he took our family on a first-time skiing trip. The last of our group to get on the lift, the bunny hill closed. Husband and kids somewhere ahead, I fell rather than stepped off at the top into a drift. Shaken and cold, bug helpless on my back, legs twisted, face hot, snow fluttering from a gray sky, temperature dropping, the terrifying downhill slope falling away abruptly below me. That's when this kind man appeared, assessed the scene, helped me out of my skis and up, then into them again, and never once laughed. And I grasped the ski poles he held out behind his back as he shoosed straight down, gifting me the ride of my life. This is in memory of Dennis Neal Cronifeld, who died in 2019. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm sorry for your loss, Judy.
Thank you.
Our next reader is Shelly Blankman. And I'm glad that she felt well enough to come today, because she said she might not. Shelly, you still here?
Okay, she's
Okay.
unmuted.
Okay, hi. Thank you.
Your screen is half obscured. I don't know.
Sorry.
Do you have something hanging on the screen or something? Because we
Camera?
No, let's see if I can fix this real fast. Yes, Shelly dear?
Well, in any case, we at least see her face. You just covered up Shelly.
Yeah, what I'm trying to do is, sorry. Let's see if this helps any.
I guess that's as much as we're going to get. So go ahead. Now you don't have any sound.
I'm sorry, just go on without me.
All right, I'm gonna fix the sound. Wait,
No.
no, we have sound.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. Nobody needs to see my face anyway. Which is interesting because it's my poem starts out, "Do not hide your face." All right. Judy's face is showing, so you could just lip read. You could just lip sync. Okay. It's called "Do Not Hide." This was inspired by our last administration, where I got pretty open with the subject. It says, "Do not hide. Do not hide your face. Do not live his shame. You were a wildflower dancing in a field speckled with jeweled gold colors of spring when he plucked you, so rare, so fragile. He said he would nourish you, nurture, and protect you. Then he closed the door, shut out the sun, left you to drown in thick tears of his liquored crime, and your soul to wither and die. But wildflowers do not die. They wait for rain and grow again. Do not hide your face or live his shame. Do not let us see your beauty through your pain. Keep you safe as you bloom again. A wildflower is not a weed." And my second is, I apologize. Are you getting noise from the background?
No.
To stop.
Oh.
John, can you help? I'm sorry, I'm so bad with this. I apologize. The second one is, my name is Miriam. And if it runs on too long, just beat me. Okay. I'm sorry.
I think maybe not today. You're sort of out of time. I'm sorry.
Now.
Oh,
yes.
In the reading, Anita Lyric asked to read, to take the place of someone who didn't come. So unless Heather Pease is here and I didn't see you, I don't think she is, then go ahead, Anita.
Thank you. Hopefully everybody can hear me. This started out as a Valentine poem, but it developed a mind of its own. Love song for child. Her transplanted home after war and burnings was a mishmash of words in a foreign tongue meant to keep hungry children out. No fairy tales or nursery rhymes, no tickling stories of dinosaurs with huge tails. Just be grateful you're alive. At the corner store, she pointed to the milk, grabbed the change, $1.25. The words spreading out like jam across her lips. She flung the money silently on the kitchen table, keeping the taste of language to herself. Words swirled around her in schoolyards, snowball scuds, ungraspable. How clumsy, look at her fall. Where did she learn her English? She steps along jumpy streets, not really her place, no place, just a jumble of bodies ticking under cover of clothing. Keep out. Summers her family spent in cabins, no English, but for the radio, dishing out words carved from musicals and baseball. She would walk away from herself to greet the new worlds crisscrossing in her belly. But at night, ghost voices cursed her. She cast spells with stones, feathers, fair ladies and kings, raising up magical syllables on breath and wind. She flew higher, fresher, fearless, a bird in the forest of the word, perched on trees that were history. Be still, children, hear her songs of love. We are all children with wounds from long ago and far away. The end.
Wow, that was quite powerful. Thank you very much, Nina. Jeff Carter is our last reader. Jeff, you still here? Jeff?
He's muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. There's a controversy going on right now in Hermosa Beach. Allen Ginsberg's portrait was taken down by probably the Chamber of Commerce because they accused him of being involved with the North American Man-Boy Association. So this is brought to mind a poem I wrote several years ago. Bisbee Poetry Festival, 1982. The poets believe they're sanctifying this old church, desanctified 3 decades ago. Ginsberg fidgets on his metal folding chair, paying the penalty for fame, a 2-hour open mic. My voice shakes as I begin to recite. Ginsberg once asked who killed the pork chops. My first poem ends, who killed Saint Sebastian? What's the sound of no hands clapping? I imagine arrows showering down toward me from the readers waiting their turn. My next poem, I've got a minute left, recounts an evening years ago, car camping with a male friend, our bedrolls in the back, leaning together like an old couple. Ginsberg perks up. He looks right at me, staring hard as I return to my seat. I sit there on the metal chair, sweating, hearing again the sound of no hands clapping until someone passes me a note, an origami swan, which, when I unfold it, is initialed AG and asks, are you my angel? Copper Queen Hotel, room 144, 10 tonight. I made up the last part, so you don't need to ask me. Can I read one short one or are we done?
I think we're done, but okay. Thank you very much. All right, so that will do it for today. Thank you all for coming. As usual, it was a wonderful, varied, and fun morning. And I hope you'll go on to have a wonderful rest of the day.
We do the same,
poetry.
Robbie. Thanks for
Thank you.
having us.
All right. We'll see you next month.
Thank
All right.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Kathy.